I did just receive an email from Joe. He is trying to join. He just has a slow connection at the moment. We are currently not at a quorum of SRC members. So I'm going to go ahead and email those that have not reached out to me yet and see if they are still able to join or not. So go ahead, if you need to go run and do something, do that quickly, and I'm going to see if I can get us to a quorum. So just give me a moment and bear with me. Thank you.
Hi, Amy.
How are you, Nisha?
Good. I
Good.
think Jody is on and Leslie is kind of on.
Yeah, I haven't seen her yet, but I see her things.
Yeah.
How have your last few weeks been?
Good. Busy. Good. Busy.
You went on vacation though, didn't you?
Yeah. Right after our
Nice.
meeting,
Good,
the day after.
good.
Heather just came on, so I think that gets us a quorum, doesn't it? But
Is
we
it
definitely
5?
need our chairman.
Yeah, we do. Oh, we do.
Yes, that does get us with Heather, that does get us to a quorum, but it would be very helpful to have our chair as he's the one that drafted y'all's report. So I'm gonna go ahead and text him quickly and see if I can troubleshoot with him. And I will be right back.
Thank you.
Can our call-in user announce their name?
Yes, this is Joe DeWeese.
Okay, thank
Hey,
you.
Joe.
Hey, everybody. Sorry, I'm apparently in the middle of nowhere. Doesn't have great service, so imagine that.
No worries. I was actually just about to text you to try calling in via your phone, but you got there before me. So we do officially have a quorum. We have our chair. So let's go ahead and get started. I just want to once again thank you all for taking your time out of your day to join us for this important work. Shortly, I will be doing a roll call just to establish quorum and who is present, and then also read our statement of necessity. For that, I will go ahead and let Sarah give you a welcome as well.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. And likewise, welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time to meet again as a group. I really appreciated being with you some of the time last session and think that there's more to be done here. So appreciate the work that Joe's done, certainly on the executive summary. Already, I think our team has found many of those suggestions to be helpful. We've been doing this work for a while, but gosh, there's always more to tweak and change. And I think you've made some really important tactical suggestions that will certainly help improve the process moving forward. So I'll be interested to listen in on the dialogue today. I'm here to help support in any way I can along with Catherine. But just again, want to thank you all for taking this journey with us and for coming back together today to see it through to completion. So certainly let us know how we can be helpful to the discussion today, but appreciate all the attention you've put to this work to date. And we'll turn it back over to you, Catherine, or over to Joe to get us started in earnest.
Very good. Catherine, any other business before we get started?
Yes, I am going to take a roll call to establish our quorum, and then also I do need to read a statement of necessity that's required by state law since we are meeting via teleconference versus in person. So we will start with roll call. Leslie Clifton.
Present.
Joe DeWeese.
Here.
Jennifer Hamblin. Heather Herman.
Here, sorry, unmuting, sorry.
All good. Amy Massengill.
Here.
Nisha Powers.
Here.
Jody Rump. Michael Steele. Mr. Chair, you have 6 members present and you do have a quorum. And I will go ahead and read our statement of necessity into the record. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated Section 8-44-108B3, the Standards Recommendation Committee for Science by and through the State Board of Education hereby submits this statement of necessity for its meeting held via teleconference at 12 p.m. Central Time on June 26, 2022. In order to meet the Standards Recommendations Committee's statutory requirements, this meeting was called to consider the revisions to the Tennessee Academic Standards for Science and the accompanying executive report. The revised standards are set to be implemented in the 2025-26 school year. Therefore, the standards review process must be completed with enough time for the state textbook and instructional material review process to happen, as well as districts and schools to be prepared to implement the new standards. Because the members of this committee reside across the state, it was determined that a physical quorum of members could not be assembled in Nashville for the purpose of this meeting. As such, the Science SRC will meet via teleconferencing on June 26, 2022. This meeting was posted via the state board's website along with agenda and instructions for dialing in for the public.
Just a small point, Catherine, it's June 27th.
June 27th. Thank you. I will clarify that in the written statement. I appreciate you catching that. And with that, I will pass it off to your lovely chair.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this from the computer. Can y'all hear me okay? All right. I'm going to keep my video off to try to preserve some bandwidth here. As we get started, a couple things. So one, obviously, we need to review our summary. We also need to go and see if there's any comments now that everyone's had a moment to review the standards. But before that, one note of order that we need to talk about. Catherine notified me of this. So they have attempted to run our meeting recordings through a voice recognition program to create kind of automated transcripts. That was not super successful. It sounds like there were some technical challenges to that just in terms of our conversations and the difficulty capturing that. And so we have, of course, the recordings that are available on YouTube, but we had voted to have a written record. And so we need to, I think we need to have a discussion and vote that we are okay with a recorded record. YouTube does make captions and annotations, but it's kind of limited by the same thing. It's AI generated, and so it's not necessarily 100%. And at the moment, the board staff does not have the capacity, the bandwidth to write out a full written record of this for us. And so the request is on the floor for us if we would consider voting to allow for the YouTube recordings to stand as our record. And just, I want to open it up, see if there's any discussion or comment about that, and then we can call for a motion as we see appropriate. So any comments or thoughts about using the YouTube recordings as our record? I don't see any. Okay, so Mike is trying to get on. Okay. All right. I will entertain a motion to accept the YouTube video as our record of our meeting.
I so move.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
All right. We have a motion and a second from Leslie.
I will go ahead and call the roll. Leslie Clifton,
Aye.
Joe DeWeese,
Aye.
Heather Herman, Amy Massengill.
Sorry,
Aye.
Heather Herman says yes. I was muted by the host. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Amy Massengill,
Aye.
Nisha Powers,
I'll abstain. I just think there should be some form of written record, even if it's limited.
Jody Rump, Mr. Chair, you have 5 ayes and the motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. And per Nisha's point, I don't know if the records that were generated, if there was anything worth using of them, whether you or Nathan, or if anybody has a comment on that. But we could take a look at that perhaps and see if there's anything. But I understand sometimes as you have conversations, multiple conversations going on, it can be hard to capture that in an automated fashion.
I actually just got a note from Nathan, who is much more better about knowing when things pass and don't pass. And he has informed me it does not pass. Nathan, are you
Yeah.
able to?
So because it's a substantive action and the commission under the law is entitled to 10 votes, and there are you only have the barest of a quorum there. 5 votes, 1 abstention is a courteous no. So that abstention causes it to fail. And therefore it doesn't pass. I will say that also it's a very thing to attempt to produce a transcript. It's something that maybe you ever watch the United States Senate. They have transcript clerks that come on. They do 13-minute shifts, capture every word that's said, and then they go off of the floor. They come on and they go off. A set of motions, you know, that record could be done, but yeah, you could do a record of the votes taken and the substantive motions. It's just to do a transcript is something, I mean, that the state house, the state senate don't do that.
Okay, go ahead, Nisha.
I might offer a friendly amendment to the motion that every attempt is made to produce some record, even if it is abridged version of the meeting minutes that reflects something in writing of what was decided and some of the deliberation highlights.
So typically minutes that are reduced to writing consist of substantive motions and the votes taken thereof, which would, you know, that could certainly be done, and then have it, you know, supplemented by the video so that everybody can see and go back and hear every word that was spoken. It's one of the things that proves very troubling as well is just that the computer can't tell who's at what point in time. So that's why we kind of get some gobbledygook on the screen instead of. But,
I will also say this committee only took 2 substantive motions beyond roll call, and that was the one at the beginning on Wednesday to have a written record of minutes, and then at the very end of Thursday, the motion to approve the standards as revised by this committee. So that is currently where those stand, and those would be the only 2 included in how we traditionally do Thursday and Friday, how we do traditionally do written records. I just wanted to clarify that for you all.
we'd have the agenda there.
The agenda mostly just says work time, though. It does not actually like break down. I mean, I could, one of us could go in and potentially break down the timestamps on like, when are you talking about elementary school? When are you talking about middle school? When are you talking about high school? So that if an individual was interested in a specific grade band, they would know what timestamps to go to. I feel like that could be a feasible option for our staff to produce, and have a more detailed agenda that can be shared. And then they'll know where in the video to go to.
Thank you, Catherine. Nisha, would that be acceptable if we at least have that kind of timestamps of what grades were discussed at what point in time?
I think that would be super helpful. And I think one other thing, and I may have just missed this in the documents that you sent, and I'm sorry if I did, was just a summary of the changes that were made. Is that being produced? Because I think that can be a great supplement to the time-stamped minutes that says, here are the items that were revised as per discussion during the meeting.
That does not currently exist, but that is, once again, something, anything that has a substantive change, we can collate those since we do have the red line.
Yeah, I was going to say, since it was track changes, we have the track changes document, which you could, output those changes or probably distill it down in the sense to you're saying the key changes and things that were made. So Nisha, if we had, for instance, our major motions, substantive motions, we have a list of timestamps of when the grades were discussed for those who want to go back and review. And then we have a list of major changes or revisions that were made. I guess this would be of individual standards. I think that would cover most of that. While it won't capture all the discussion, you can at least go back and view that if needed. Is that acceptable, Nisha?
Yes, it is. I think that's a great compromise. And I was also going to suggest that somebody try to reach out to Mike, because I'm sure he's trying hard to get on. And if we're trying to get votes down the line, that might be helpful.
Our communications manager is in contact with him.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, let me ask Nathan, is it appropriate for me to ask for a amended motion then with?
Yeah, you need a basically restate a new motion. That last motion failed. So as chair, you'd say, that motion failed, but you have had substantive conversation between that motion and this next motion. So that counts. You can take it up again. And then, Nisha, if you know how you want to say it, you can.
I think I offered a friendly motion to that failed motion. Is that?
Yeah, it's failed, and therefore
failed
it's not
too.
in front of the body anymore, though.
Okay.
So you'd have to start from the beginning.
Okay. So I'll attempt a motion.
Okay, please.
Joe. I will move that we produce a supplement to the video documentation of our meeting, which provides the substantive voting, and also produce a document that summarizes where edits were made to the standards and maybe distilled version of some of the significant portions of the meeting associated with those changes.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. So in terms of that, we're asking for, it sounds like our video to be supplemented with the record of the major votes, the major changes, substantive changes made within the document, and then timestamps so that all those particular changes can be tracked with that. Okay. Any further discussion before a vote? Turn it over to Catherine then for a vote.
Great, I will call the roll. Leslie Clifton.
Aye.
Joe DeWeese.
Aye.
Heather Herman.
Aye.
Amy Massengill.
Aye.
Nisha Powers.
Aye.
Jody Rump.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 ayes, and this motion does pass.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all helping get that taken care of. So we have a game plan there to make sure all this is recorded properly. So thank you all for working with us on that. Before we talk about any edits or revisions suggested to the summary, I wanted to first open up, see, is there any further discussion we need to have about the revisions? Now that everybody's kind of had a chance to reflect and read over them. We do have the red line document that I sent out, which was generated by Catherine and some other folks to show us where those edits were made. And so if there are places in there that you want to go in and talk about, or other ones that you didn't get to talk about that you'd like to reflect on, I want to give us just a couple minutes for this before we move on. So let me open it up for comment.
Joe, this
Go
is
ahead, Jody.
Jody.
Hey, Jody.
Hi. So I have a question. We just voted on the changes in the substantive that Nisha talked about, Nisha motioned. Do we have documented, I think Kelly and the other girl, Andrea, they mentioned that there were issues or there were changes made from last year, 2016 to this year before it got to us. Do we need to have those documented as well so someone can track the process of the standard throughout the process?
That's a great question. My understanding is that is tracked. So there's an Excel spreadsheet that includes all of those changes and the rationale behind those. My understanding is we were not provided that because it is a bit convoluted to follow. I know Leslie's experienced that with the math standards, so she's nodding yes. And so what we were given was kind of the cleaned up version with those changes made. Yet, you know, if anybody needs to see those, I'm sure Catherine could provide that for you. But yes, that is documented. I did not have that. I would have sent that out, but I did not actually have that particular document in my possession. So.
Yes, those do exist. They are absolutely available should someone request them. But as Joe did mention, they are a little bit confusing to follow, particularly if you were not involved in those conversations. And based on feedback from the math committee, that is why we chose to provide you with the clean version this time around. But that does exist should someone request that information.
Very good.
It's also the same, Mr. Chairman, in terms of the last set of standards that are up there. Those are always accessible to the public and always up on the website. Free.
Yeah, we have those. I think though the concern was just so we understood, since we weren't necessarily experts in the previous set, we just have been staring at this, basically the revisions. We want to make sure we understood, you know, how they got from the 2016 version to the revised version we were looking at. So, and I think that Excel sheet documents that. So that is available. Great question, Jody. Other comments or concerns?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Since Jody raised that issue, I've had questions kind of through the process about exactly how procedurally that works, that administratively changes get made before they come to the SRC. Is that just how the procedures are outlined? And then if so, does it make sense for us to, I know it might feel like overkill on adding information to our packet, but since we have an appendix now with the surveys 1 and 2, does it make sense to go ahead and add something similar with the Excel spreadsheet of the changes to the standards that were made before we got to them?
I am just not quite sure the value that those Excel sheets are going to provide to the average person. I think it may end up being more confusing than helpful.
Let me suggest this. And we did have this discussion, and so I think this is potentially feasible. If we have the original standards from 2016 in a parallel kind of Word format to what we have would we call it our 130 something pager? I can't remember what the number was, 133. we could potentially run a track changes and just show the difference between the 130 some odd pager that we were looking at before our changes and the original version. I don't know if that exists in Word, because I know y'all didn't. I know y'all made the 133 pager based on the changes, but did it? Was
Yes.
there a Word document prior to that that you could do track
So
changes?
that Word document was created fully by hand.
Okay.
The 2016 process happened before I was on the staff. And in looking back at our state records, we have the PDF version, which is on the department website and our website. We do not have a Word version. We could obviously attempt to change the PDF into a Word document, but as you know, sometimes that does get a little screwy.
I know you very well. Yeah.
But
Well, yeah, I was trying not to create extra work.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I know there are so many documents and reports that we do where we do comparisons between PDFs, comparisons between Word documents.
Sure.
I just think for the sanctity of this process, I don't know if I'm using the right word, but sort of to preserve.
Yeah.
You know, starting point 1 and then 2 and then 3 where we entered, it should have that kind of flow.
Well,
And
let me offer this, and I'll see if Catherine and Nathan have a thought on this. Since we know where most of the changes were made, would it be possible to grab those grades and those standards and just do a lineup between those? In other words, keep it a much more limited subset of the whole text. You don't have to compare entire documents. But in other words, if there were changes made in kindergarten, let's compare the 2016 kindergarten versus the 133-page kindergarten and just see where those two documents are different, which would capture, I think, Tanisha's point. You know, here's where some revisions were made before we saw it.
yes, and that is possible. Obviously, like in the Excel sheets, that is all tracked. So someone could go back and highlight those changes via track changes. My question for you all is, obviously, these are going to a vote to the state board on July 20th. And I am, Nathan and Sarah can speak to this as well. I am absolutely willing for us to do our best to get all of these different things done. But as I have mentioned, we are down one of our key people for our state board processes, and I have taken over much of that responsibility. And so our staff capacity just is in reality somewhat limited at this current point in time. Is some of these supplemental materials something you're willing to have produced in August once our capacity has increased a little bit, or are you like firm that you want this when it is presented to the state board?
so, Mr. Chair, is this something that Andrea and Kelly could do as consultants to this process, especially because I think that they were the ones involved in the revisions.
Right.
If I'm not misunderstanding that, I certainly don't want to impose any more work on your team than you can handle, but I think it's still important to the process, I believe,
Sure.
before it goes public and goes before the board. So I would, if we have consultants on the team that are part of the process, I would think that they could help do that.
That would require us going back through the state contracting process. We've already had to extend their contracts once when we anticipated this meeting being held in April versus June, and their contracts have technically expired. And so currently they are not able to do like that level of continued work. Obviously, like if we have questions for them, they'd be more than happy to answer. But we're not currently able to compensate them any longer for work that they might do on the behalf of the state board. And unfortunately, the state contracting processes do take a while, as Nathan can speak to.
Okay. I'm okay if this is something that takes a little bit longer. I don't know how the rest of the group feels. I do think it's a worthwhile thing to capture. But I think that when we present it or when it's taken to the board, I don't have a particular hang up if that's not available just yet, as long as we get a commitment that that's something that could happen in the fall and be out.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll definitely have, like I said, we definitely will have that red line. We will have your executive summary. I am going to do my best to get the video supplements done. I just anticipate that because someone's going to have to manually go back through and mark those edits from the 2016 version.
Right.
I just don't think that that particular piece is going to be able to get done by our July board meeting. But like I said, after our July board meeting, August is typically a little bit of a slower month for me. And so I will absolutely dedicate time on my calendar to work on that and have that done for you all.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, so I'll just make a motion that the changes that were reflected between the original standards and the revisions made by the consultants be reflected in a summary form, making those comparisons no later than August 2022, with the understanding that the board meeting will occur in July and this information will not be ready for that time.
Okay, we have a motion, and just to understand your motion, that would be by the end of August 2022. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Catherine, is that a reasonable timeline for you?
Yes.
Okay. Any objections to that? And do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Very good. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion before Catherine takes votes? All right, so what we're voting on is that the changes between the 2016 standards and the standard development committee, the expert educator assessment teams, and the standards development committee revisions be tracked so that people can see what was changed from between those two documents, and to have that done by the end of August 2022.
Mr. Chair, I should have said, and be added to our document as an appendix, sorry.
Yes, and add those in as an appendix. Sure thing. Okay. All right, we'll take a vote.
Leslie. I will come back to her.
Let's put baby down.
Okay.
Sorry, aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Jennifer. Oh, she's not here. Heather Herman.
Hi.
Amy Massengill.
Aye.
Nisha Powers.
Aye.
Jody Rump.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 ayes and the motion passes.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, any further discussion on the document before we talk about the our summary, executive summary? Okay, I now want to open discussion for any revisions, and what I will do on my end here, I've got the document open, and I will make changes to the executive summary that I will then send out to everyone after this meeting. I'm open to revisions, suggestions on wording. I did receive one suggestion to change Cade to kindergarten, spell it out. So I did that. Always had trouble spelling kindergarten, by the way. So anyway, I'm thankful for spell check. That's all I gotta say. So, any suggestions for revised wording, language, section, things that I missed? I did not bring my notes with me to camp, but I do have kind of my primary punch list, and I feel like we hit most of those things. But does anybody see any gaps or things that maybe I missed in the summary or maybe need to be clarified?
Would it be helpful if I pulled up the document?
That'd be fine, sure.
Mr. Chair, I do have several proposed changes.
Sure, sure.
And I'm wondering if I use track changes to do mine
Yes,
just so that I can
yes.
talk through them, but it might be more convoluted in me trying to do it verbally, and I might just send out the proposed markups to everybody.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest, why don't you email that? Does anybody else have revisions tracked like that? Amy, Heather, no. I'm seeing shaking head, no. Leslie,
Is it possible for you to put it up on your screen? Is it possible
Yeah.
for it to be shared? from
Sure.
That
I
way,
will go ahead and stop sharing then.
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, if you can make it so Nisha can share, let's look at Nisha's edits. I'm fine with that.
Elizabeth, can you give Nisha sharing power? I believe she's already on that.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
I hope you don't see any of my kiddo pictures and all you're seeing is what you need to see.
Yes, we got it.
Okay. So you see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, correct. We can see your Word document. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one thing I did, and again, this is all just Nisha's thoughts, individual thoughts, but I thought I'd put them out there, and if anybody is interested, we can talk through them. If not, we can just keep going past them.
Okay.
One thing, Joe, that I appreciate, first of all, let me just say, I know that it's really hard to capture everybody's thoughts and put them in writing. So thank you for that effort, because that's not easy to do. So I appreciate you doing that. My brain thought about it a little differently. And so I might have tried to restructure some of it just to kind of group things together.
Sure.
So you'll see in this initial section where I actually gave a heading of surveys and feedback.
Okay.
And there were, in the way that you had presented it, I think you had in discussion about the survey, both at the beginning of that first section and sort of the last paragraph. So I just brought them together.
Very good.
And then added some language, which I will, and one thing I tried to do in each of these is instead of just stating something, proposing a recommendation.
Yes.
That
very
way
good.
it's more actionary than just statement. And then the other thing I did is if Catherine or someone gave us a statement or information, I just attributed it to them in the language. So if you want to look at this before we go and let me know what you think.
So this is Heather. I had a question about the approximately 400 individuals responding. Will you
Yes.
take me through that number again, just to make sure I'm
Yes.
following?
So I asked Catherine in our meeting on Friday if there was a way for Scantron to give us information on how many people responded. So if you recall the documents we had, the numbers that we were seeing were numbers of standards reviewed. Okay. And so we saw totals of, might be 1,000 or whatever, but that 1,000 standards might represent, let's say, 30 individuals that reviewed a bunch of standards each, if that makes sense. And so the way the Scantron counted feedback was based upon individual standards. Okay, so kind of subset thing, as opposed to here's a respondent and they happen to respond to make comments on 100 different standards. Okay, so it counted their responses individually as opposed to the people. So Catherine was able to get for us from Scantron how many unique individuals actually took the survey. And that's the approximately 400 per wave that we got. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. That really helps remind me and put it back
Yes.
together.
Yes.
And I wonder, I was reading it, if there was a need to maybe include a little more clarification around the connection between that 400 individuals responding to each wave and for a total number of whatever comments or something.
So in other words, find the number of the total number of standards they surveyed or something?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's important to be able to say 10,000 responses or what have you, because then you'll, one, have consistent measurement in both regards, the number of people and the number of responses, right? But also that you can see that the 400 people that did respond participated in that amount of
Yeah.
of contribution.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say those numbers should be right in that Scantron report. So we should be able to pull that out.
Yeah.
And
It's more like connecting the dots for this executive summary, so it doesn't.
Sure. That makes sense. Go ahead, Jody. Did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, so just to be clear, I had a question about I'm sorry, there's yard people. I'm sorry, let me mute this real quick. Hang on.
You're fine. Yeah, if someone, I don't have those documents, but if someone can look through and pull those totals, we could easily put some numbers in.
Is that background sound bothering you guys or not?
No, you're fine.
Okay,
Good.
so I'm looking at, this was one of my issues that I had with the surveys is consistency throughout, the first set and then the second set. And so is what I'm understanding is out of these 10,262 responses to the science standards, those were made up of 400 individuals. Is that
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So then there's even less. That was the first responses. So there are second responses, then there should be even less since we didn't have, there wasn't consistency in the demographics of who was responding.
So that's a good point. There still ended up being almost right around 400 unique individuals in both ways. But you're right, the composition in terms of number of people in each category was not the same. That's
Okay.
correct. Yes.
I think the effort to like spell that out as a concern here, we should be like complete in that discussion part for wave one.
Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, just for context, for surveys and feedback, having gone through all four of these subjects before, I mean, typically science just gets the least amount of responses. The social studies, first round of discussions is out. They've already surpassed the total number of science. And that's been up since last Monday. Okay. So there's, I guess having worked in other states and looked at the processes used in other states, as far as the transparency and the ability to get people involved, I think we're pretty well unmatched as far as that goes. I do understand some of the concerns here about recommend that name and contact information be required, and you say it's paramount that survey respondents know that their feedback will be held in confidence. These are public documents. The law will not permit us to collect that information and not make it public should someone ask. So that can't be done. I know the first round, and I'm not certain if our current contract is covering this or not, but when we did it the first time, it did capture everyone's URL address. So you actually could figure out where it came from. And ones that were from out of state were called out. But yeah,
So
some of that's just
speak to
open
that
records.
a little bit too.
Okay.
Scantron does have access to the IP addresses that submit these surveys. As Nathan said, we did have a discussion internally. We really, it is unlikely that the state board will ever collect personally identifying information because anyone in the state can request these documents and we have to provide it. And we don't want people to not participate because they don't want their information shared. On that note, though, however, about doing our best to ensure that our respondents are coming from Tennessee, we made the decision for the social studies survey, which opened on Monday, that in addition to a self-declaration that you are a Tennessee resident, you also have to manually input your zip code. So we will at least have information on the breakdown of geographics on the respondents. And because you have to manually enter the zip code, we're hoping that that will be another deterrent for out-of-state individuals to try to lie. But that is about as close to personally identifying information as our staff is comfortable in collecting, because these do fall under public records request ability.
And I'll also say that we appreciate you know, these suggestions, and we, you know, so that's an improvement that's already been made, just on that. But yeah, it's kind of tough because anything you send to us, unless it's, you know, attorney-client privileged, and we're not your client if you're an attorney, right? So that wouldn't count there. Every bit of that's all public. So when we say transparency, we actually mean it, and the law requires us to, as far as that goes.
I have a question concerning all of that. Maybe not just thinking of the process, because I know you guys kind of inherited, or Catherine inherited this process. But maybe I think what bothered me about it is, out of 147 or however many school districts we have in 1,700 schools, are all the districts being represented? You know, so if not necessarily like, I don't really care what someone's phone number is or where they live to make sure they live in this district, but I know that to make sure that all the districts are represented, so we can have a really consistent and thorough evaluation of the standards, and to make sure that everybody's being represented in the state of Tennessee. Does that make sense?
Jody, I don't think there's a way. I mean, you can't force them to do it. We do send out notice. Just like we do on everything the board does, for that matter. When something's on first reading, every superintendent in the state gets notice of it. We put it out on a website. We do all of that kind of stuff. And it's, you know, sometimes it's just frustrating because you're thinking, hey, you know, my superintendent ought to be, or my school board member, you know, teacher in my kid's science class ought to know this and be involved with it. And so, you make it available, but you can't always force them to, force the, you know, folks to drink, as far as the horse going to water.
Right.
This is Sarah. I just gonna jump in because I agree, Jody. I mean, that is definitely the goal, and we will continue to do everything in our power to find different ways of tapping into the networks and ensuring that our educators in particular really know about these surveys when they're available. I mean, Nathan's right. You can't obviously force folks to do it. And we have in the past relied more heavily on the department staff to help us with that. And that relationship is changing a bit in terms of their ability to help amplify the opportunity. So we're thinking about other partners, and any suggestions that you all have and want to include in your report, I think would be very well received and helpful, because I agree. I mean, that is the goal. We have to do everything we can to make sure people know that this survey is out there. And even with something like social studies, where we're going to generate more traffic just because it's potentially more on folks' radar through the news, you know, we want to make sure it's representative, you know, in terms of the voices and the opinions out there. So just know this will be a constant sort of effort for us at the board, and any suggestions you all have to help us in terms of getting the word out would be much appreciated.
And as noted, we are collecting that zip code data, and we are still requiring the self-identification of like, what role are you answering the survey as, like a parent, a student, a teacher, a district employee, higher ed. And so we will be able to get kind of a better sense of, we'll know like if they identify as teacher, and then we have a good mix of zip codes represented who identify as teacher, will know how well we have represented different districts, and et cetera. So I mean, that was a really good recommendation that came out of this group, and I think all of us are excited to kind of have that additional level of data to look at moving forward on our future reviews.
Very good. So let me go back to this paragraph Nisha's working on. So Nisha, I think the only comment in here that might be concerning, might want to tweak a little bit, is we recommend that respondents are asked to provide contact information. Maybe can we alter that language a little bit and maybe stick with that last sentence? Maybe make it optional that if someone wants to provide contact information. I mean, we had one educator leave, I think, his contact information, you know, so that people could get back with him. So, we could make it optional if the board and others see that as helpful.
I do think as someone who does a survey, if you are an educator and you're doing the survey, you may feel more comfortable if you know you have the ability to be anonymous in that. I just feel like that's a safer way, and then give that option, like you said, Joe. That's probably a good suggestion, I think.
Yeah, and you can make it completely optional. That way, if somebody wanted to engage in the process a little more, there might be, something to that. I don't know.
I just edited it a little bit. Does that make any more sense now? We recommend that respondents are provided the option of providing their contact info in the comment section so that there can be follow-up.
Yeah, and you might even, and we'll have to think about how to put something on there, because we'll have to make it clear that once you submit it, anybody can ask.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, you'd have to state the item to say, if you choose to do this, obviously you've given up anonymity. But yes, I think Leslie's right. I think to protect educators and even parents who might want to respond to these surveys, I think it's valuable to protect that ability to respond. So I think these are good options. It's not ideal, right? I mean, we can't control everybody and protect against every form of fraud, but hopefully we can minimize some of that. Yeah, Amy suggests, how about given the option rather than provided? I think she's bothered by the providing. I could tell. So Nisha, back in your sentence, we recommend that the respondents are given the option of providing.
Sorry about that. I can't see your comments while I'm doing this for some reason.
No, you're fine. I'll translate for you. So given the option.
Is there an intention for follow-up with the survey?
Well, I think the idea would be if somebody offered something and wanted to be available for that might be something helpful potentially to the Standards Development Committee or the educational assessment teams. I don't know this. I can see some scenarios where it might be helpful.
Yeah.
That's why I suggested it.
Yeah.
That there can be follow-up if there's something that requires clarification where it's not clear what they're suggesting or context.
Also, the FOIA is a federal act and doesn't cover this, so we just say open records requests.
Yeah.
I probably use it too loosely as almost a vernacular term.
I do the same thing.
In that statement there, Nisha, just put is open to records requests.
Thank you.
Yeah, there we go.
And then to some of the other folks, and I think Jody was the one that raised it about wanting things to be more far-reaching. The previous paragraph, last sentence, we recommend that a more comprehensive process of seeking feedback from wide-reaching sources be implemented. Should I say that differently to address what we're specifically asking for?
Yeah, I thought some on that as I was writing the summary, and I was trying to think of what some strategies might be, but
we have actually, based on y'all's feedback, been brainstorming that as well for ourselves. And one of the things that we are going to try with the social studies standard, we just got internal approval for this, is actually running a Facebook ad that will be focused. You can set a geographic region for those. So it will only be shown to people who say that they live in Tennessee. So that is one of the strategies that we are employing for our social studies review to try to reach a broader audience. So we are brainstorming on ways to kind of get beyond people who are in the know on education issues and reach a more varied population.
I would love to hear from Leslie or maybe even Jody from her conversations just about what is a good tool for teachers to participate.
I was actually going to say something a few minutes ago about that, and then it looked like we were segueing out of that conversation. I will say that the state has done an excellent job trying to get information to their educators. I have gotten it through the state professional. I belong to 2 different organizations. It's come through that. I've get newsletters for both of those. I've get it through my local educator organization that I'm a member of, through my school system. So I've seen it. That's 4 different methods that I have seen it. Our principal has shared it through, not only through our school system, but our principal has mentioned it during our faculty meetings and during our info as far as digital emails, daily emails that we receive, our daily news. And then I've also received it from my science cohorts who are, and I'm a member of a professional organization of science teachers. So several different options of receiving that information. I don't know about other curriculum, whether they're receiving the information as from all the different sources that I am, but I feel like I'm getting a lot of information regarding that.
So I feel like that's kind of what drove me to be concerned about the survey is how important Leslie, I think everybody on this committee will agree how important she was on her input, because she's in the classroom in these grades, like 6th grade, I think is what she's teaching. And to me, when I was gone onto this committee, I set out to just talk to 100 teachers, and I did, of all different counties around me, and different subjects, mostly science. And I just wonder what the disconnect is. I know I don't know. I just think it's very important for this to be presented to the board about, hey, we're just this one recommendation committee, science, but it's so important. If we're, falling so far behind the rest of the country, that we've got to fix this process. And I wonder why. I just am interested in in healthcare, it's a different situation, but we followed the same kind of things as she was mentioning with her, all of her groups that she's a part of and everything else. Why is there such a disconnect in some places? Why do some teachers not even realize their standards they have to follow, or their curriculum, whatever they need to do? So I'm just trying to find out why in our state, because I didn't search other states, but why is there such a disconnect? And, and how do we get the board to, because I think the board is exhaustive. I think you guys do a lot of work to try to engage all these people, and it's exhaustive work. And you're even reaching as far as to Facebook to like, hey, but where are people these days, right? Like, how do we get a hold of these people? So I think the bigger question in my mind is why are these teachers not engaged, and why aren't they doing as much as she mentioned that she did? And that's concerning to me. It's concerning. I mean, just some people like, I follow Next Gen. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. I just know that it's a bad word or something, like in education, right? Like, and I'm getting curriculum out of Texas, and I'm like, what? Hold on, that doesn't make sense. But here she is, she's covered with it. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that's like how it should be, So I don't know where the disconnect is, but that might be a whole nother conversation. But I think the board needs to know that there definitely is some sort of disconnect with what's going on in certain districts, because I think it shows. I mean, like we all said, we want to be a kid in her classroom. We all want to go back to 6th grade science class with her. So anyway, that's just my input on that subject.
Jody, one thing to think about though, in terms of, we think about the state being so far behind. For the longest time, we were about 48th and 49th in a whole lot of things. But one of the things that the state has really excelled at and gotten better at 25th and 26th and 23rd and places like that have been the science areas, actually.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm public.
So I think there's
science background. I am for moving forward on all of this. I want us to be better. So I just want us to be better. That's all.
And I think it's also, our standards have been looked at, and science is pretty strong generally. Yeah. And so that's probably it. I mean, when it's tough to compare with social studies, right? I mean, that's the center of the culture war and everything else going on. And math and science, when it was first getting away from the Common Core, why huge numbers in flux there. But it's not because y'all's work isn't tremendously important. It's just maybe it's just not on the forefront of everybody's thought process as much.
Well, and I think that not to put words in Jody's mouth, but I'm going to put words in Jody's mouth just from our 2 days that we spent together. I think that a lot of what she was talking about also, Nathan, is that we talked to teachers who never even knew these surveys existed. And then yet here's Leslie saying, I got it from 5 or 6 different sources, which is fantastic. And so our question is why? And that's not a question for you to answer. That's, that's not your job, but that's where a lot of our frustration came during those 2 days, is because we all personally know teachers who were never given this survey, never saw the survey. Now that may be their fault. That's very, very fair there. But I just wanted to kind of add that into it. It wasn't just us comparing ourselves to math, social studies, English. It was also just, why did someone in Kingsport, get it from 4 different locations? Now, granted, Leslie's a great teacher and she's looking for it. So there is that to be said as well. But then why is someone in Murfreesboro not even aware that this exists? So that's, and hey, maybe a Facebook ad is going to surprise us. Who knows? Power of social media. I think it's great that you guys are exploring options like that, Catherine.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. This is a great discussion, and I hope Nathan and Catherine and Sarah and others on the board, take it obviously as constructive feedback, because we appreciate what you all are doing, and we want to help it reach more people. And it is concerning that teachers, I would say in that statement, Nisha, maybe that many teachers were not aware maybe of the survey, rather than had not been. So, whether it's few or many, our point here is not to criticize the board. Our point is to say we've got to help find some more effective strategies, because gone are the days that we could put it on the 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock news and everybody gets it, right. Everybody's getting media from so many different sources now, so it's a bit more of a challenge, and we certainly understand that. And Amy and I understand in our fields that we get all kinds of communications from professional groups and organizations, and there are those emails you ignore, and there are those that you spend time on, and that's an element of it too. So some of it comes down to how engaged are those educators, and I was interested as a parent. How am I supposed to know about this? Right now, I know about this because of this experience, but I'm just thinking about the average parent in the state of Tennessee. How are they supposed to know? Or the average faculty member at a university in Tennessee, at a college or university level, how are they supposed to know? And again, it comes back to those networks and what networks you're part of and which ones you're not, because I fully believe Catherine and the team there are putting these things out. It's just, are people looking at them and looking for them? So,
And
all
Joe,
right. Go ahead, Nisha.
just to piggyback on what you're saying, you hit the nail on the head on the parents issue for me, because we've talked so much about teachers, and that's critical. But also from a parent perspective, I don't know that if it goes to the district superintendents, if they even think about this ought to be shared with parents, because we want to engage parents too, I don't even know what I don't know if it's PTA anymore. We call it Parents Club at Lucas's school, which I serve on now. But whatever that group is, are an engaged group of people that should also be sought for feedback, because we want that balance.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to that point, I don't know about y'all, but I get plenty of communications from the superintendent and director of schools in our districts. This is certainly something they could pass along. And so I don't know how best to help the board communicate that when they send that out to the various districts, whether it's the superintendent or director, whatever level it is at a particular district, that helping them realize this is something valuable for the whole community, that everybody could see. I think that would be great. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, both parents, teachers, our district loves to use the language of stakeholders, right? All the stakeholders, right? That's the current lingo. And that's really what I think Nisha and I are saying, is that the stakeholders of a particular community to have time, opportunity to feedback. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Thank you. Very good. Okay, let's keep moving forward here. I feel like we've got these parts. I feel like look pretty good, Nisha. I don't have any major issues with them. Let's move into the next section here.
And you'll see here, the green is where I took them out of order or sequence
Yes,
that you had
sure.
it in. I hope that's clear from what you're seeing.
Yes, yes, that makes sense.
The first red note is about that process that I said I didn't understand, the procedural piece
Yeah.
of going from survey 1 to
Mhm.
the consultants making changes before it comes to us.
Yeah.
That's just not clear to me about is every change supposed to be proposed from us?
No,
Or
no, no. So that goes back to the process. So the process is the initial survey goes by way of those educational assessment teams. I may be using the wrong term there.
Educational advisory team.
Advisory teams. There we go. And the standards development committee to make a series of revisions based upon that first round of feedback, then get a second round of feedback, then we get it. So that is part of the built-in process. Nathan can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's
No, that's right, and it's spelled out in statute there. The concept was actually to give it not just, the people, not just one bite at the apple, but two.
right.
As well as to, temper that with your educator teams, which you've got higher ed and K-12 educators on, looking at not only what's reasonable to be taught in this period of time, but does that get them ready for higher ed? And, with every bit of that being public, if the public wants to attend it. And then you all at the tail end to say, yep, this is good, or, this makes sense, or make changes as you see fit there. So, yeah, it's all laid out.
And as Nathan said, this is all dictated by state statute. So the timing of all of these groups, like when the first feedback survey is versus when the educator advisory teams and who's on those, and then the standards development committee and the second feedback survey and the standards recommendation committee, which is you all, that is all laid out by state statute. And so we actually don't have authority to make changes on how that process operates. It have to be an act of legislation.
Oh, and I definitely wasn't suggesting that I wanted to change the process. I think I'm just still struggling to get the process down in my brain. And what I'm hearing only further makes me say that piece of the puzzle of making sure that we have the original version versus the revised version by the consultant group, the something team, advisory team, it's even more important that because that happens completely without us involved in the process, all the more important that be documented. So I'm just going to delete this.
Yes.
And then move on down.
Very good. Okay, so it looks like you moved this statement up and recommendation be to provide service. Yes. And so I think that last statement there in red, where you've edited in red, and that's really the core of what you're concerned about, right? And that is that
yes,
just so we as a committee can know here's what happened. And so again, Catherine, I don't know the best way to do that. If that means that, of course, now you're in this process, so you have those Word documents, but if there's an original Word document and then a track changes Word document that says here's what's been revised, that would probably be the simplest scenario.
Yes.
Obviously, it can get really convoluted.
It has been one of my goals as I go through each of these subjects. The same thing happened with math. We did not have a original Word document of the standards as they were being taught, which once again caused issues. So I have made sure that all of the Word documents are created as we go through these processes and will be saved in the State Board digital archives for future use. So
Perfect. That'd be great. So, yeah, I feel like I feel like we said what we need to say there, Nisha. I think those are good edits. It's good revision.
And then I just gave the
Yeah.
schedule and timing for the last section because the first one was kind of about surveys and this one
Yes,
more
very
about the
good.
schedule.
I like it. Mhm.
You know, Nisha, what you say there about the terminology used to develop the standards, it's something that we always are kind of wrestling with, and we wrestle with it in terms of when the Department of Education makes presentations in front of our board members as well.
Right.
Because there is a bazillion and one of these acronyms. There's like this little dictionary of educational acronyms, and it's just something that we are always trying to work on to remind folks who do this every day that the whole world doesn't do it every day, and acronyms and jargon doesn't help much unless everybody's speaking the same language. And so, you know, that is a constant kind of struggle that we're all involved in. But
Yep.
you know.
Yeah, and that, you know, in writing that, it was mainly, you know, I think a lot of us kind of, I don't know, I had a turning point epiphany when I started to read and see the language and see how it works. While I think some of us struggled because the terms are not used in the way that we might in our discipline, you know, being able to understand them in their context, you know, was very helpful. And so I think the admonition there is just simply that, hey, is there some way for us to bring, you know, bring that to the forefront so that maybe that happens before we meet? That way, as we review those standards, the language makes more sense. Because the first time I read the standards document, I thought, these are really crazy. These are weird. You know, like it didn't flow with it until I got some of that language, which our experts who assisted were did a great job in helping, you know, break that down. So that was very helpful. So, okay, what's next, Nisha? I think those are all very reasonable. Okay, that was moved up. Yep. All right, and then process. Yep. So if yeah, just spell out kindergarten. I want to make it a garden, I guess, is my problem. So I don't know. Anyway.
That's actually where the word comes from, Joe. It's German for kid garden, kid
Right.
growing.
Right.
So you're not wrong.
I just want to bring it over into
Yeah.
English like that. But anyway.
And then I did this, I kind of tried to follow Mike's logic and just said
Yes.
high school probably is too generic and made
Right.
it 12th
That's
grade.
fair. That's very fair.
And really just minor little things here. And then I added this.
Okay.
So Nathan may be able to speak to this a little bit too. The State Board of Education has virtually no authority over the textbook and instructional material adoption process. That is determined by the Textbook and Material Commission and districts. But so I would say that this might be more work for the Department of Education, as the Textbook and Material Commission sits under them administratively. But that is definitely like feedback that you can still include in here. And we can make sure that the department is aware that these issues, and we can be better at sharing that with the department. But ultimately, it would be the department who would need to kind of help bridge this gap.
And BOE, does that refer to local boards of education here? Okay.
Sorry, I was trying to distinguish between staff, like y'all, and the actual board. I don't know how to do that.
Okay.
But I can just call it SBE, that's fine.
And so, yeah, but so the Textbook and Instructional Materials Commission is its own deal. Their members are confirmed by the legislature. And that they are administratively attached under the Department of Education, but they've gotten more independent in recent years.
So
But yeah, so literally the approval that the board does of textbooks is a massive list of the whole subject. And it's basically like the last sort of final backstop in case something went wrong with the approval process from the Textbook and Instructional Materials Commission. So it's more like a final emergency brake if one had to be pulled. There's not been a time, at least in the modern era, where there's, any kind of substantive review that is done by the board. That's always the Textbook and Instructional Materials Commission.
and that may very well be where the problem exists. Because, I mean, I think his name was Brian, that was there from the,
Yes, he was there from the
Department of Education. So he's super well versed in the framework portion of things and how that ties. And the fact that there's not more collaboration between the entities who are establishing the standards and the entity, or parenthetically S entities, whichever, is working on the textbooks, may very well be why our teachers are suffering from, I don't have all the stuff I need to be able to teach the stuff I need to teach.
I'd push back on the lack of collaboration. I mean, I talk with the chair of the Instructional Materials Commission probably twice a week. It's just they have all of the subjects review and change, and then they have an adoption cycle it's I don't know what, a year or two past when we adopt new standards. And so there's just a lag that happens after we adopt the standards. Then those Tennessee standards are put out to all of the companies that make these things, and then they apply and go through a review process. And the Textbook and Instructional Materials Commission ultimately has the authority to say, yes, this textbook does comport with Tennessee standards, or no, it does not. And after that point in time, they produce a list, and the local districts will get new textbooks, typically, if they choose to, from that list. So.
Yeah, and I think something Nathan's getting at is like, ultimately, it's up to the district to decide, are they going to buy new textbooks? What are the textbooks they're going to buy based off of this approved list that the Textbook Commission has given them? Districts actually have ultimately the majority of the say in what happens with textbooks and materials. And we can't tell districts what to do or what not to do beyond saying you need to pick materials that are from this approved list. But it's usually like a very extensive list, and they have lots of options to choose from.
I will tell you that I know our district has done this. I've been on the committee for selection of the textbooks for certain for science for the different grade levels, and they take their lump sum of money, and some districts choose to take whatever money they have from their tax funds, I'm imagining, and from district funds from the state, maybe. Anyway, they're different amounts of monies. I'm sorry, I have a 10-month-old down here at my feet talking the whole time, every time I talk. But anyway, they will take that money, and they will either choose to buy textbooks for the classroom. They might only use a portion of that money for textbooks, and then another portion for websites that they are going to join as a yearly fee that will supplement the textbook. So I think there's, like Catherine and Nathan both were saying, there's a lot of leeway in a district for them to be able to use their funding to educate children. So it's difficult to be able to figure out who's going to spend their money where and how.
So if I can summarize what I'm hearing, it sounds like the issue that we're concerned about and that Nisha's raised here is legitimate, but it's more at a local level than it is at the and it's like that for a reason. In other words, the fact that we've constrained it to a local level keeps the state from perhaps overreach, but also leaves local districts susceptible to their own, to the nuances of their environment and whether or not they are managing those resources well, and maybe have limited resources legitimately.
There's one word to respond with that, and that's yep.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
It's a tough business because education authority is like this, it's all over the place. It's separated in a lot of different ways. And what you just said is a pretty good summary.
Yeah. Nisha, the next paragraph, I think I tried to address some of this concern, at least the part of it that I felt like could be influenced by the board, in that last paragraph right there below. And so I'm wondering if there's a need for that, for the paragraph you've written, if we just take the one below and maybe add a little language to it. Because what I was trying to do in this paragraph was to say exactly what you're talking about, in the sense that we need to make sure that to whatever extent the board can partner with the Department of Education to make sure that PD is provided for educators, so that we know what the standards are, the local educators know how to implement them, and maybe examples they can use in their classrooms to teach them. That's what I saw as kind of the main thing. In fact, that's what we spent quite a bit of time asking Leslie, as well as some of our experts in the room, how would you teach what would be the example you'd use for this? Because I think that was where some of this hang up was. And so that was kind of the emphasis of that particular paragraph, was just the idea that we want to make sure the teachers have what they need, and are equipped and prepared. And if that requires, statewide professional development offerings through the board or the DOE, that type of thing be provided. So that's where I was going with that, because I felt like that was what the board would be limited to. So
Joe, I think the difference between your paragraph and mine, and it may feel like semantics, but it's more related to the connection, not with educator training, but with textbooks and standards coordination, which is why I separated it out in a separate paragraph. And I would love to hear Jody or Heather or Amy's commentary, because if everybody kind of is in agreement with you on the fact that it's generally covered in your paragraph, I'll acquiesce.
sorry, they've got the loudspeaker going right now. So I agree, Nisha. I agree with you on the concern about bringing the two together. I guess my point is that we may not be the body to make that type of recommendation. Does that make sense? I feel like that's not our purview. While I agree with it, I'm just saying I'm wondering if that's not really our particular role here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I don't think we can make them work together, but because so much of our feedback address that, and some of our conversations with teachers heavily emphasize that, I think it always kind of gets, I get the feeling that because of the autonomy at the local level, that this kind of just gets brushed. And it would be nice for it to get some attention at a higher level, or just
Sure.
be noted.
Yeah.
Obviously, this has no authority to make anybody do anything, but.
Well, and as you have it written, I have no objection to it. I mean, I think it's reasonable, and you leave it open to the board, Department of Education, to do whatever they can do. So I don't have an issue with it, but I do see your point. My concern was, is that our purview, or do we need to step back from that? I'm open to feedback on that from other committee members, as well as Nathan or others that may have thoughts on that.
Well, on your question, Joe, about whether it's the right place to make a recommendation or not, let's take that separately in a moment. At the moment, what we're suggesting here is that the State Board of Education, the Department of Education, could work to change this. And ultimately, though, through the course of conversation, I think what we've discovered is that there's, this decision is made by the local boards of education. In other words, that so we can and do collaborate with the Department of Education, with the Textbook and Instructional Materials Commission on a great many things on a very routine basis. But no matter how well we coordinate it, it doesn't mean we can force districts to buy new textbooks for science teachers every time. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not sure that paragraph gets at what you're trying to get at. In terms of the powers of the Standards Recommendation Commission, obviously it's your powers are to make the final recommendation about what the science standards ought to look like. Other SRCs in the past have put explanatory statements or done a resolution, this is kind of what this is, to say these are our concerns or thoughts about the general world of science or social studies or math or English education. And they've done that from time to time. So you certainly have the ability and the right to put something there if you want to. In reading this, I don't think that that's quite, if we worked beautifully collaboratively, which we do very well, but if we did that on every issue every day, it still wouldn't change what you're trying to get at. That's all.
Very good. Any other comments from any other committee members on this particular paragraph? Okay.
I think it's important for us to make sure that since we did have a lot of discussion about it, I think it's important that we do make sure that we include something in there about it.
Yes. Yeah. And like I say, I don't have a problem with it. I think to Nathan's point, I'm not sure
it's going to do anything, right? But
it's going to go anywhere. But I don't have an objection to it as written. I don't think there's anything objectionable to it.
I think more like, since our name is going on these standards that we worked hard on, and that Catherine and Andrea and Kelly worked, so they did so much work on that. I think it's important for them to realize, like, even though we put these standards and we've agreed on these standards, it's not necessarily going to match their textbooks. And I think that's maybe part of the concern that I have. I don't know if anybody else, but I think that's obviously not every district is like Leslie's district and amazing. So I think that they need to know that, like, oh, well, you're putting this stuff into place and we don't have the textbooks, and how come you guys do that? I think that this is showing me this is much deeper than where we are right now. We just need to make sure that we're notating that we realize this and that we want it on the record.
Yes. And again, I don't have an objection to it. So very good.
The new dog.
I don't know if you guys remember us talking about this, but I was shocked when I found out that there's no assessment for science, but there is for math and English. Do y'all remember that?
The statewide assessments start in grade 3. So it's only kindergarten through 2nd grade. And that is the same. There is no statewide assessment in any subject in kindergarten through 2nd grade. So social studies doesn't have one, science doesn't, math nor English have one in K through 2.
There was
State assessments start in 3rd grade, and all content areas have assessments starting in 3rd grade.
There was something very specific we talked about where Brian said, we have it for math and English, but not for science. And I had noted in my notes that that was assessment related. Does anybody else remember that?
Nathan or Sarah, am I misspeaking by chance?
Well, what I was, I remember something about that, Nisha. So you're not totally off there, but I think.
I mean, the reality is in the lower grades, English and math are absolutely the focus of the majority of teachers.
Yeah.
But that is not the result of there being an assessment. That's just the result of that's where they choose to spend their time and energy.
Yeah. So I think Nisha is correct on that, but I think Catherine is right in that it does start, because I'm thinking about my kids and what they've been assessed on. I do think it starts before 5th grade, but I'd have to be I'd have to look that up, so I can't remember.
I do know that statewide assessments do start in third grade for all subjects.
For all subjects, okay. So, and I
And by all
think that's-
subjects, I mean the 4 core academic areas.
So when does science start?
Third grade.
third grade would be.
So Joe, what do you think I was hearing?
No, I think you were right in that was the discussion, but the discussion was that, kindergarten, first, second, there's no science assessment, which was not shocking to me because I've got kids that just went through those grades and I remember what they were getting assessed on. And the discussion was framed very much like you're talking about, in the sense that educators at those lower grade levels tend to not focus as much on science because they perhaps tend to not have trained a whole lot in that area. So that's not a major focus unless it happens to be a passion of a particular educator. And I mean, we looked at the standards, right? So kindergarten standards, first grade standards, second grade standards for science were relatively brief. There was not a whole lot to them, with the idea that they're building over time. So yeah, I understand the concern, Nisha, but I think in terms of the way they're developing, where that is, I think that's right. Now, I don't know how that compares, other
Like I said.
states, things like that, but
Yeah, I don't know about other states either, but it's also not like it's just science that doesn't have a K through 2 assessment.
right.
No, none of the core subject areas have a state level assessment because generally we like some kindergartners can't even read. How are they going to take a state assessment? So yeah, just all state assessments start in the third grade. That isn't to say though that districts and schools aren't using formative assessments and other forms of assessment to track student progress, and those are probably only happening in math and English, but at the state level.
What? Okay, maybe that's what it is. Say that again.
So no assessments at the state level in kindergarten through second grade in any subject. However, districts and schools can choose to implement assessments for their own use. And my guess is at kindergarten, I mean, this even happens at the middle school, any district or school level assessments that are given are typically only in math and or English.
So my kids, I'm in Rutherford County, and my kids had exactly what you're describing there in all 4 subjects every single year. So it must be a county to county thing. I mean, my kids got a report card that was a math, science, and there
those
were
do start for
test grades.
everyone in third grade.
Oh no, mine had it in K1 too as well.
Okay,
But
so then that is,
so
that's a
I think I'm
determination of the
proving your
district.
point.
Yeah.
I think I'm proving your point, Catherine,
Yeah.
that it is a district by district thing, might even be a school by school thing for that matter. Because like Catherine said, if the kids can't take a state standard science test if they don't know how to add and read, which a lot of the entering kindergartners don't do.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nisha, I've been racking my brain. I don't know what. I'm not trying to say you heard something that wasn't said. I just don't I don't remember what you're thinking. I'm sure that you heard something and I'm not suggesting you made it up, but I don't remember that discussion
I mean,
at
I
all.
specifically had noted, the National Survey of Science and Math Educators, and then the thing about teachers not feeling confident. I remember all that because it was in
That I remember. That
Yeah.
I do remember. We talked about how
You
there
did.
is an emphasis on the reading and the math more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and I remember it too, Nisha. I was not shocked by it again because my kids had just went through that, but I think that was the discussion, was that the standardized testing for science in particular doesn't start until third grade. But again, having seen those standards, I don't know that there's a whole lot to test them over, before that. So I don't know that, unless you want to beef up, first and second grade standards significantly, I don't know that there's a whole lot for them to be tested over in a standardized way. Now, my kids did get grades in those areas, right? So there were other ways, that they were being assessed on a local level in those areas for sure. So, and I've lived, we've been in 2 different districts, and both districts that we were in handled it more or less the same way, same types of assessments. So
Well, and isn't this this is sort of circular back to the point of these standards that we have approved,
Mhm.
is that is setting the expectation for the minimum level of learning that is going on in the classroom, and that those standards are being evaluated teacher by principal by superintendent by district by state, right? And so I just I think that setting a statement that suggests that there is a more formal sort of documentation of that assessment at levels that have not already been preset is perhaps beyond you know where those developmentally appropriate stages are.
Very good. So, so it's not that it's a bad point, Nisha. I just don't know that there's much that we would move on there because there's not a lot to test on before that third grade. So, my recommendation would be just to drop that paragraph.
Okay.
That's my suggestion. I'm open to other ideas if anyone wants to
I
defend
mean,
that.
I can also just add, kind of going back to the other thing, I mean, y'all could add the recommendation that a state level assessment be added in kindergarten through second grade in science. The odds of that happening are virtually non-existent, since they don't even want to do that for math and English, because the general view is students of that age are just too young to be taking standardized assessments. And that the quality of information
Yeah.
that would come from those is not going to be that high, because we can't, because as we said, students are still learning how to read and add in those grade levels. So once again, there's just not that much to assess. It's about building those skills and foundations that they will need once they get to third grade, to be able to do the stuff that then will get assessed at the state level.
Very good. So, so we
Thanks,
made it through the document. Any final comments or thoughts
there
here?
be added to the 400 number that I brought up at the beginning?
Yeah, let's go back up to that, Nisha. Thank you. So, so what you're looking for, Heather, you want the total number of comments, like let's say for wave 1 or wave 2. Is that what you're thinking, or total
Yeah,
number of
so that
standards?
it reflects, what those 400 contributed. Again, it's to show that the 400 were engaged in how much ever they participated in this year's process. But in addition, it allows for, maybe we get 700 participants next time and 400 comments. I don't know. You wouldn't get that much, but I would just say 700 comments. I don't know.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to
Mm,
show the level of engagement there.
yeah.
Could you just add it? Could you just add it right there, Nisha, where you've put? Oh, I'm sitting here with my cursor on the screen, like you guys can see my cursor on your screen. Sorry, where it says with approximately 400 unique individuals responding. Then could we put something about totaling however many comments? Or I'm not getting the exact right wording, but.
Yeah, I think you could make a part of the same statement. Do we
Something
have
in
that?
there.
Does someone
That's-
have that number at hand, by the way?
It's 9371.
Okay, so about almost 10,000. Okay. Is that for wave 2?
This is from the wave 2, the one that Catherine provided for us at the meeting, and it's on page 4. Is this the correct table, Catherine? I'm referring to as overall summary of survey responses through K through 12 science standards.
You're muted, Catherine. Sorry.
Right there.
Catherine, you're muted.
Catherine, you're still muted. Sorry.
Sorry. Yes, that is definitely the correct number for the second wave. I knew it was somewhere in the 9,000s.
400 the right number for that wave as well, or does that need to say 400 unique?
It was
right.
400 for both
Yeah,
individual
close to
people
400.
for both.
Yeah, it might have been like 404 and 401 or something, but
She
yeah,
has approximately there.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I put that approximately, was because it was give or take a couple.
Just one little tiny thing, Nisha, a comma after responses, totaling 9371 responses, comma. There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
That gets you what you want, Heather?
Yeah,
Yeah,
is that
fair.
is
I
it
think
clear enough? I
that's
think it's hard to capture because we're saying responses, and a response is really a response to a particular standard, right? So some standards had, as we saw as we went through, some standards had no responses, some standards had 200. So
One option would just be change the language slightly to say 400 unique individuals submitted feedback,
okay.
totaling 9,371 responses.
Mhm. Make it submitted, if you will, Nisha, past tense. Thank you.
And that way we're not doubling up on the respondents responding thing.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Any other clarifications we need? Okay. All right. I think we're at a place where we can wrap this up if there are no objections to it. Is this something, and I'll look to Catherine and Nathan on this, do we need to vote on this? Okay, Catherine shaking her
I
head.
would, yeah, I believe Nathan had to hop off. He has to drive to East Tennessee today.
I do. I've got I'll pop on for just a second. Yeah, you do need to vote on it.
Yep.
And that's all good. But I got a little thing at 2, and then I'm going to East Tennessee again. But I'll stick with you as long as you need me.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good. We'll try to wrap up here. All right.
So yeah, we just need the motion, a second, and then I can do roll call to approve the executive summary with edits.
Very good. I think we would, I think we're open for a motion to approve this executive summary with the edits as Nisha has on her draft. I'm open for that motion.
I so move.
Okay, motion from Amy. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second from Leslie, and we'll go to a vote.
Okay, Leslie,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Nisha,
Aye.
Jody.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 ayes and the motion passes.
Hey, that's exciting. So congratulations, everybody. Thank you so much for here. I'll show my face for just a second here. So I'll wave at everybody. Thank you all for your hard work on this. We're in the state of Kentucky here.
Ooh, beautiful.
So yeah, we have air conditioned cabins. So with Wi-Fi. Not sure that's camp. I'm still trying to figure out how that's camp, but at any rate, thank you all for your hard work on this. Thank you, Catherine, Nathan, Sarah, others, Elizabeth, who helped us put this meeting together. And I hope we've been able to get everything covered. Nisha, if you'll take that version and accept those changes and send that out to everybody. And then the only other things we'll be lacking are the things that Catherine will be working on for us over the next month or so to fulfill things. But as it is, this summary with our revisions will go to the board. You said on, did you say the 20th? July? Or
If the 20th is a Friday, then yes, the 21st and 22nd.
21st, 22nd.
So they will be under consideration on the 22nd.
Very good.
And I will be sure that I compile everything, including this executive summary and the relevant appendices, and get this to you as soon as I have it ready so that you guys can see it before it goes to the board for the vote. And yeah.
All right.
Joe, it makes me nervous just to accept the changes and not
Okay.
have a marked up version. So I'm going to PDF the marked up version
Yeah,
so everybody
yeah,
can
that's
see where
fine.
those changes
That's fine.
are. And then I'm just going to send the complete accept change Word document.
That'd be perfect. I was to say that, yeah, you can print it to a PDF or save it as another version and then save all, accept all. But yes, that'd be fine. And we can give it a read through. If there's a minor tweak here or there, if we missed a word or something, we can take care of that. But I think as you've got it, I think it'll be good. So thank you so much. Thanks for doing that,
Yes.
Nisha.
I want to once again thank you all for your time and dedication to this process. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your thoughtful consideration on how the state board can continue to improve this process. And as I've shared, we are already taking some of those into consideration for social studies, and do plan on implementing some of your additional feedback to continue to improve this process. I would like to once again just pass it off to Sarah quickly to close us out.
You said it best, Catherine. Really appreciate everyone's work. That was, as a former English teacher, it is hard to do group editing, and that was impressive. Oh, we may get a little baby there.
There you go.
Well, quick view. That's a good way to
Very
close
good.
out. But no, thank you, everyone. We really do appreciate your work on this, and never hesitate to reach out one-on-one to Catherine, Nathan, or myself if you have anything else you want to talk about or further input for us. But hope everyone has a great rest of your summer, and we'll look forward to representing your work well with the board later in July.
Very good. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all. Nisha, thanks for being our scribe today. Take care.
My pleasure.
Very good. Y'all have a
Yep.
great one. Peace.
Bye, y'all.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.